as we talk about a very important topic, and that is assessments. As you know, we are in the midst of our assessments now. I'm joined here today by Councilmember Michael A. Patterson, who represents the Northeast District, along with Council President Miguel A. Melendez, a local real estate broker and owner of New to You Homes, Christopher Thomas, City Assessor Mike Zazzara, Deputy Assessor Enza Minio, Finance Director Kim Jones, and our Budget Director Suzanne Warren. First off, I want to thank the dedicated city staff for all their hard work that they have been working on as we conduct this assessment. And over the past many months, for them taking time away from their families and spending numerous hours meeting with members of the public, briefing the senior team, briefing council members. They have spent a lot of time here, and we are happy for that. But one of the things that is extremely important to me is that we get the facts out to our residents, and we are always looking at ways to fine-tune those messages and actually reach the people who are most affected by this. And we know that there has been lots of information around assessments, some misleading information, some misconceptions about the assessment that we think it is important to clear up, and that we do this in an individualized way, and we will be announcing what we'll be doing around those sessions in a second. Let me just say one other thing, and that is that the city has been conducting assessments like this for 40 years. For 40 years, we have been conducting these assessments. It's important for us to conduct these assessments, and it's important for us to conduct these assessments because we want to make sure that the people who are most helped by this are not hurt by adverse information or misinformation. Now, the difference this year, and I'm going to have Chris speak to this in a second before I call up Councilmember Patterson, is that we haven't seen anything like this since the 80s in terms of the market. The market has changed. And I can tell you that as a former banker, a house is not like a car. When you buy a car, it immediately depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot. When you buy a house, your hope and your wish and your dream is that it does not depreciate. You want to see it appreciate in value. And I recognize that in Rochester, because we are a poor city, many people aren't used to seeing their home values increase. And for years, we have had people say, Mayor, I bought this house for $60,000. I've been living here for 20 years, and it's only worth $65,000. When am I going to see an increase in my home value? When am I going to see an increase in my investment as others have seen across the city? And for the first time in many years, we have seen this happen in Rochester. We know that owning a home drives generational wealth, particularly in our Black and brown communities and in communities that have been redlined. But if you're living in a house and that house was assessed at $50,000 30 years ago and is still assessed at $50,000, you have not gained any equity or value in that house. This is the first time in many years that we haven't seen that. The other thing I want to assure the public about is that we set the tax rates, and we can say clearly, and I want to say this extremely clearly, just because an assessment goes up does not mean that your taxes will go up. Just because your assessment goes up does not mean that your taxes will go up. Assessments do not affect taxes at the same multiplier. So if your house went up by 10%, that does not mean that your taxes will go up by 10%. If your house went up by 100%, it does not mean that your taxes will go up by 100%. So although there are homes that saw maybe a 50% increase or a 100% increase in their value, that does not mean that their taxes will increase at the same rate. And I will tell you that my budget director can talk all day about how the tax levels influence tax rates and how when the denominator, and I'll take you back to school, I wasn't a big fan of fractions. I loved algebra. But there were some forms of fractions that I liked. When the denominator, which you know if you look at a line, that's the bottom, right? When the denominator of the tax formula increases, it naturally reduces the tax rate. So you can have, for example, if you're a senior and you lived in your house for 40 years and you see an increase in your assessment, you can actually see, and on many occasions, and in many instances, will actually see a decrease in your tax rate because the denominator, the bottom, the more people assessed, that number has gone up. So if you don't do an assessment or you ignore that number, you are therefore going to deprive someone that may live on Joseph Avenue for 40 years their tax cut rate, and they will actually be subsidizing someone who may have just bought the house for $400,000. So think about that. It is important for people to understand that. The other thing that is important for people to remember, and Councilmember Patterson would touch on this, is that we have the STAR program, the enhanced STAR program, that when you flip over that paper that you get, that tells you the deductions that you are eligible for and that you can take advantage of. So this is also about fairness. If there wasn't an assessment, Rochester could be subsidizing other towns throughout Monroe County due to something called the equalization rate, which we won't get into here because we want to keep it high level and we want to focus on the individual attention that we are going to get for people today. But the one takeaway is increased value does not mean increased taxes, because we set the tax levy. It can only grow by so much, and when you have a higher number in that denominator, it allows us to spread it evenly and hold our tax rate flat, which is what we have done, which City Council has done for the last 3 years. And what we plan on continuing to do, because we're aware of inflationary pressures. We're aware of all of the things that our residents, the needs that they have to meet. So math is complex, but it's not exciting, but it's important. It's important because it's important that particularly our seniors understand how this is going to affect them, and we do not want to unnecessarily alarm them with false information. I'll also say that if I was someone who always wanted to prove that they were right, if I wanted to prove that I was right, I would say, you know what, yeah, we're going to prove that we're right and let people's taxes go up. But guess what? If we did that, who would they come to see? These folks and me at City Hall. So we're not looking to prove that we're right. We're looking to make sure that we give information. We're looking to make sure that we give information. Because when you govern, you have an obligation to improve the message, to give the proper information, and to make sure that governing is put ahead of everything else. And that is what we are trying to do here. So as you know, there's a lot of information that is out there, videos that were put up at cityofrochester.gov/assessment that can help homeowners understand the assessment process and how taxes are impacted by your assessment. There are some property owners in our city who believe that they've received an assessment that is inaccurate. And for those homeowners, there's a defined process that we can work through. And again, that information is on cityofrochester.gov/assessment. But we also know that these are personal situations, so not everybody wants to go on our website. We know that there's a digital divide in our community, so we don't expect everyone to go on the website, and that's why we are going to make these sessions available that I'll talk about in a second, and have people continue to communicate through us at City Hall in person. The informal stage of that process is complete, but the formal Board of Assessment review process, which is guided by New York State, is still available to you through March 19th. So remember that date, March 19th. That process requires you to appear for a hearing at City Hall before the board. And to do that, you have to complete the application and submit it before March 19th. So that's a date to remember. And you can get those forms at City Hall. So if you don't want to deal with the computer and you're not as tech savvy, I'm not a big tech guy, I'm still kind of old school. You can and you don't want to download them from the website, The city will even mail them to you. We will even mail you the forms at 585-428-7221 if you want to pick up the phone and say, hey, I don't have time to come to City Hall, or I don't want to print them or download them. We will mail you those forms. And I always tell people to keep in mind that because we're dealing with state guidelines as it relates to the Board of Assessment Review, they are strict state guidelines, so save that date, keep that date, mark it in your calendar, put it in your phone. March 19th, that deadline is extremely important, and it's very important. And as I've said a few times this morning, we know reassessments are a complex process. And because they're sometimes complex, it is easy for misinformation to rule the day. And I am proud that the team has said, we want to meet people personally that might have questions outside of the formal process. We know the website is a fantastic resource, but we want to make sure that we are sharing information. Information like if your property tax value, as I said, has gone up by 60% or less, your property taxes will most likely stay the same or even decrease. Or if you're a senior, what exemptions do you qualify for? How do we make sure that you get the most aggressive state exemptions and credits that you qualify for? You may have a question, what if you want to follow through with the Board of Assessment Review process and need help with paperwork or sworn testimony? These are all things that are important and questions that many people in our community has. So as we mentioned, we know that people are very busy, working every day to complete the citywide reassessment to serve city residents and businesses equitably and fairly. And even still, the team has rallied to create a series, which we're announcing today, of Get the Facts, resources and information sessions to help city property owners better understand their assessments. At these sessions, you can sit with an appraiser who can walk you step by step through your assessment letter that you received in December, and you can pick up forms for the Board of Assessment Review and learn what information you need to formally form to contest your assessment. And you can pick up assessment materials and watch videos at these sessions that explains the process. We will conduct 5 events. Right now, we are scheduled for 5 events across the city in the coming weeks. The first one will be February 28th at Walker Lightfoot R Center for Equity Justice at 271 Flint Street. On Saturday, March 2nd, Charlotte Branch Library. March 6th, Frederick Douglass R Center. March 9th, David Gant R Center on North Street. March 12th, Edgerton Center on Backus Street. And you can attend any of these events that fits your calendar, but we set them up in every quadrant of the city to make sure that it is convenient for people. I want to thank our assessment team and their partners for willing to staff these events and providing guidance to questions and answers. I want to thank council, and in particular, Michael A. Patterson, who was the impetus for these sessions. He has been, and you'll hear from him after you hear from Chris Thomas, who will just talk a little bit about the market. He has been sitting with mainly seniors for the last 2 months since the letters came out, sitting with them in their homes at their dining room tables, in conference rooms here at City Hall, looking at their letters, explaining to them how their assessment affects them. And why this is so very important is that after he spoke to them, many of them realized that their taxes, after their deductions, and after their possible star credits, that their taxes were not going to go up at all. But they just needed someone to sit with them and explain to them. So that is what we will be doing as those sessions. We will announce them again. They will be out. You all will have them, and we ask that you please distribute them far and wide. But I want to have Chris Thomas, who is a licensed New York State realtor. He's been in this business for a long time, helping people throughout the community, talk about this market, what we're seeing, and he can tell you about the lay of the land as it relates to the real estate market in Rochester. He is an authority and an expert on this topic. Mr. Chris Thomas.
Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. So I'm Christopher Thomas. I'm a real estate broker here in Rochester. I've been in real estate for over 30 years. I opened up a brokerage about 16 years ago. My brokerage is dedicated to helping disenfranchised, disadvantaged first-time homebuyers achieve that goal. Over the past 4 years, that goal has become extremely difficult. I used to be able to tell people that you could own for the same as you could rent here in Rochester. I can't say that anymore. Up until about 2018, and all the years that I'd been doing real estate, I saw a 2 to 4% appreciation rate in Rochester. As of 2018, 2019, that rate jumped to 10, 15%, depending specifically on your area. Overall, as the mayor said, we've seen a 60% increase in the property values here in Rochester. It was due for us. It was our time. We haven't seen that appreciation. We kind of needed it. It helps everyone. Even the folks that are hurt by the fact that their assessment is raised, they still benefit by the opportunity to have more equity in their homes. So now they can take that equity and do some of the things that they might have wanted to do, open a business, take a long trip, or any of those type of things. Most importantly, Mr. Patterson explained to me some of the understanding of how the taxes are applied. And I took it and made a quick analogy. The taxes are kind of like a pie. The tax levy is that pie. That pie hasn't gotten any bigger. Each individual that owns a house has a portion of that pie. That portion of the pie, as long as everyone else's portion changes around the same, it doesn't change their tax rate. So as the mayor said, under 60% or so, no one will see an effect in their tax rate. There are areas in Rochester where appreciation has been more significant than other areas. The value of your house is, again, based on the properties similar to yours that have sold in the recent history around your house. That's going to dictate what the value of your house is, and it actually is going to affect your assessed value. In some communities, they've seen major increases, 100%, 120%. Some communities haven't seen an increase at all, or even not a decrease, but instead of going 100 and 150%, they've only gone up 40% or so. Those neighborhoods, again, as the mayor dictated, will see a decrease in their size of the pie, for lack of better words. The folks that are in areas where the appreciation rate was way more will see an increase in their slice of the pie. Thus, they'll have to pay a little bit more against their taxes. I would recommend anyone that is concerned of an assessment over 60% to reach out to a realtor to get good information on what your house is actually worth, and to understand that it's a positive thing that you have an increase in the value of your house, because that is your equity. One of the things that I get excited about when I can help a first-time home buyer achieve that goal is the fact that they now have the opportunity to gain equity just by living in their house and doing the things that they were going to do anyway. Instead of paying rent, they're paying a mortgage. That mortgage is bringing down the amount that the bank owns of their house and bringing up the amount that they own. Appreciation just brings up the amount that you own in your house and gives you the opportunity to leverage that. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Excellent. As I say, Malcolm X used to say, make it plain. Chris just made it plain. And I want to thank him for that. And Councilmember Patterson, who has been getting people's letters, people have been sending him his letters, he's been explaining them to him. So I want him to talk to you about what he's been up to and how this inspired what we're doing as it relates to these 5 sessions that will be coming up. Mr. Councilmember.
So I'll be brief, and I want to start by thanking our city staff for the work that they've done. And I'm doing that for a simple reason. I'm the longest serving member of city council. I'm the old man on council. I've owned my home for roughly 20 years, and like many of us, I've gotten the quarterly reassessment letter. I looked at it, it said this is not a bill, and I was pretty much done looking at it, because it didn't cost me anything, and I wasn't worried about it, and my assessed value wasn't going up. This year is different. We're all seeing, literally, everyone in the city is seeing an increase in assessed value. And as I looked at the letter that I received, like all of the other homeowners in the city of Rochester, I looked at this letter and it didn't make a lick of sense to me. I didn't understand how they were getting these numbers. I didn't understand how they got to these numbers. I didn't understand how or why they were saying my taxes were going up. And I took the time to sit down with our city staff to find out what the process is and how the process works. So ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying this. There is no new process. The city of Rochester is doing what the city of Rochester has always done when it does reassessments. The only thing that is different is that the market has changed. Unlike every other assessment I've ever experienced as a homeowner, every neighborhood in the city of Rochester is seeing an increase in assessed value. I am the Northeast District City Council member. Like I said, I'm the old guy on council, so I have the old assessment maps. If you guys want to see some of them, I'll show them to you. You can go to sleep. But those maps show that in many of our reassessments, property values never went up consistently across the city. Some neighborhoods would increase, some neighborhoods would decrease, a lot of neighborhoods would stay the same, but there wasn't a significant change. So because there was no significant change, we all paid this no attention. Well, now we're seeing significant change across the board. So I looked at this letter. I didn't know what was going on. City staff explained to me the process. But what they also explained to me was that, council member, you need to turn the letter over. And on the back side, there's this thing called exemptions. And I'm going, oh, okay, well, what's that? And the front of the letter says, this is what your taxes would do without any of your exemptions. So when you go to the back of the letter, it says, okay, those are the numbers that we subtract from that new number to come up with what your taxes would be. And for many of my senior citizens, I have senior citizens who, it's going to sound strange, have never actually paid property taxes because they have so many exemptions that it zeroes out the value of their property. And it looks as though for many of those same senior citizens, that's occurring with the new exemption also. What they are paying are things called embellishments. And embellishment is real simple. We got a box over here where it says special districts. Well, hazardous sidewalk, roadway, street maintenance, sidewalk repair, 40 units. Well, units are feet. So you are charged a fee based upon the number of feet of frontage you have on your house. And all of this stuff is on our city website, so I'm not making anything up. It's all there, easy to be found. And they're paying that fee, and they're paying for their garbage toter. That's what they're paying. That's what some of our fortunate senior citizens are paying. But this letter doesn't say that. And so the hope is, as the administration rolls out these sessions, individual senior citizens, anybody, any individual homeowner can sit down with a member of city staff and say, okay, well, tell me what's really going on because I don't know what's going on. This will give them a chance to get that information. But at the same time, I encourage anybody who got this letter and looked at the old assessment number, looked at the new assessment number and said that new assessment number is crazy, you have a duty and an obligation to meet with the city and challenge that number. As Chris said, talk to a realtor because unless you bought a house or you sold a house, you really don't know what the market is. I don't know what the market is. But if you don't feel that the number's right, please engage in the process. Please challenge it. The other thing is this. There are folks who believe that this whole process is a system designed to gentrify the neighborhood and run everybody's taxes through the roof. As the mayor said, we have a tax levy. Well, our tax levy is a set amount, and it can only increase 2 to 4% by state law. So we could pretty much tell you what within a range, what the new tax levy is going to be. The tax levy are the dollars that we collect from all of the property owners in the city of Rochester. That's a small number, okay? The larger number is the assessed value of all of the property in the city of Rochester. The assessed value goes up, as the mayor was saying, that's the bottom number, okay? The levy is the top number. As the bottom number gets bigger, this number gets smaller. So last year, what do we got here? So last year, our city 2023-2024 city taxes were $6.52 per thousand of assessed value. That was last year. Well, this year, that number is going to be smaller because the overall value of all of the assessed property is larger. So that's why you see, and that's why this is such an individualized thing. Your assessed value may go up, but because the number that we're going to be charging we're going to be collecting taxes at, value per thousand of assessed value is going to be smaller, your taxes may well decrease. And then in my case, I believe that that's going to happen so long as I pay my water bill on time. And because on my letter, it says my taxes are only going to go up $99. Well, you know, by the time you get done subtracting my exemption, I should be about the same, maybe a little bit more, but not enough to fight about. But that's me. If you're looking at it and you don't think it's fair, you don't think it's just, we have a process for you to engage in. Please engage in the process. And if you don't know, come to the sessions. This will be an opportunity for you to sit down with an individual person and ask some individual questions about your property, which is something that nobody's really been able to do outside of our informal assessment process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. I call him the explainer. If you know, he explained it. He's got it inside and out, but he took the time to do that. Now I want to bring up the council president. The council president called me and said, Mayor, when are these sessions starting? When are you doing? I mean, he has been relentless because he understands that because of the nature of his day job and everything else, that you have to meet people where they are, not in a big room where you're talking to 30 people and you're not talking about their individual situation, but how can we meet people where they are? And that is what the council president has been saying. How can we meet people where they are? So I want him to also talk about this process. Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to also reiterate and thank the staff here in the assessor's office, the finance team here, who have done a tremendous job spending the energy to engage with the public. And I think this is a testament, what's coming up is a testament to the next steps and the next part of that phase to ensure that the public gets the facts. So as someone who opened that bill, well, I won't call it a bill, opened the letter, and had some sticker shock myself, I will say that it was a process for me to even understand what was going on with the assessment process. Spent the energy to understand it, to learn it, and it is important that all the facts that Mike presented today gets out there to the public, that we effectively are not raising taxes per se. We are looking at equitably distributing the changes across the city of Rochester and the region. So I just want to encourage everyone to review your letter again. If you have questions still, to attend one of the sessions. If you're not able to attend one of the sessions, but you want to do a formal review process, please submit your forms by March 19th. Make sure that you are in the process to have your assessment reviewed and that you can contest this if you have challenges with it and have concerns about it. The City of Rochester website has a ton of resources that you can look at. There's videos online, as the mayor mentioned. There's also, the forms are available online through the website, and you can effectively participate in this process in a way that gets you answers, okay? So with that, I just want to thank the administration for responding to council's call to really make sure that we put additional information out there, that we update some of the information based on the feedback we were receiving from the public, and look forward to the continued opportunities for our constituents to engage in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we know when he calls, I got to answer. And I hope that we have answered in a way that is helpful to the many folks that you have been talking to and that we all have been talking to throughout this process. I appreciate the council members' partnership and their work on doing this. And I'm also very thankful again for Chris being here. I want to again just thank Kim Jones, who is our Director of Finance, Suzanne Warren, Director of Budget, our Deputy City Assessor, our City Assessor, for all of the work that they have been putting here. They're standing here. We got like sticks holding them up because they're putting in so many hours because we're going through the budget process. They are doing a yeoman's work on this. And you know, Kim and Suzanne and all these folks often talk about generational wealth. They have been doing this for many years. through subsequent administrations. And I want to thank them for their work. We know that these market changes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a banker by profession, so I understand this stuff. So for me, this is not like some academic exercise or something I'm thinking about. I lived it. 20 years in this business, 20 plus years in this business, and now even as mayor. These are not temporary or superficial things. I wish we could say that. But to Chris's point, we don't want that to be, because when somebody buys a house, they expect it to go up in value. It's not like if you're buying a car and it decreases in value as soon as you drive it off the lot. They are occurring, as we know, nationwide and according to every indicator. And I believe many of you have reported on this from the Greater Rochester of Realtors. They just had a session on this. Housing values will continue to increase. And now that we've laid out quite a bit of information for you here today, you can find information on all of these topics, including our Get the Facts reassessment resource sessions, on our website, cityofrochester.gov/assessment. And if you don't want to deal with the computer, just pick up the phone. I have experts here. Every single one of these folks are experts. I think Councilmember Patterson may have a career in finance after this, from what he's laid out. But what we can answer, we will do our best to answer any questions that you might have on this subject. Questions?
So a 60% jump sounds like a lot. Is it your understanding that for most people you anticipate them to not have their taxes raised, or?
I believe that a vast majority of people in Rochester will not see their taxes raised. And as you know, we handle the tax levy. And by state law, taxes can't go up because we have a tax cap in New York State. Taxes cannot go up by 10%, or they just can't. They cannot because of our tax cap. And then the important part, as Councilmember Patterson said, I call it page 2. You know, you got page one, you say, oh, what's going on here? Then you got to flip it over to page 2, because as Paul Harvey says, then there's the rest of the story. And the rest of the story are the exemptions. Enhanced star and star and the aged exemption. So there are exemptions. Councilmember Patterson is literally, he called me one day and said, I just met with someone and they're getting every exemption under the sun, and they are not, they're not paying any taxes. So that is, I think that is extremely important, and I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking that question, because I think people need to be reassured that we are not even if we wanted to, which I wouldn't want to, no elected official would want to do that. Even if we wanted to increase someone's taxes by 100%, we cannot do that. And we would not do that because it's not good practice, but we will not do that. So yes, thank you. Any others? Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Thomas, do you mind sharing your perspective on what makes this housing market so unique, and if you anticipate it cooling down in the future?
I would hope it would cool down. Rochester is a unique community. We have for years had lower values than the nation on average, which has now brought a lot of people from around the nation here to invest and to live, which is increasing our value. I don't think it's going to cool down. I hope that it doesn't remain as aggressive as it is right now, because my first-time home buyers are struggling. But as far as going backwards or anybody losing value, that's not going to happen. But I don't believe that it's going to continue with this voracious rate of appreciation that we've seen.
Thank you. Any other last questions? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I would please ask everyone, and I'm sure some of you may live in the city or you may know people, if you could please push out this information. We know word of mouth is just as powerful as social media and any other tools that we can have. That's why we have our council members engaged, at large city council members, Northeast. I've talked to just about every single council member about this. Many of them wanted to be here today, but they obviously had other commitments. I want to thank the media for coming last minute. I want to thank these folks for coming last minute, but because we just felt as though, I felt in my spirit that it was important to have this conversation, particularly after talking to a senior where someone told her that her taxes were going to go up by 50%, and then she turned over to the second page and realized that that was not the case, that in all likelihood she's going to see a decrease in taxes. She said, baby, you got to get out there and tell the truth, because you have people lying on you. And I don't like people lying on me. So I want to thank you all for being here today. And I appreciate you all coming out. Remember those sessions, the first one on Flint Street next Wednesday. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.